Welcome to We Have Issues, where we examine important issues dealing with middle-level education. I'm your host, Joe Pizzo. Our guest today is Michael Walker Thomas. Born March 2nd, 1988, Walker Thomas describes himself as an American author, educator, and poet. He's also a coach. At a young age, he found his love for writing by reading Encyclopedia Brown, Magic School Bus, and Goosebumps. Michael's writing influences are W.E.B. Du Bois, Carter G. Woodson, Maya Angelou, one of my all-time favorites, and James Baldwin, another one of my all-time favorites. Michael also loves the movies Finding Forrester, He Got Game, Super 8, and Inception. These are also his writing inspirations. He is the author of several books, including A Boy with a Dream, Sibling Strong, Chess Moves 1 and 2, The Voices You May Not Hear, and The Voices You May Not Hear, The Lost Pages. His new devotional book, God AM and God PM, is out now. His book series, Chess Moves, went on to be #1 and is sold worldwide in more than 10 different countries. Michael Walker Thomas, welcome to We Have Issues. It's a pleasure to have you on our show today.
Thank you. I'm blessed to be here. Thank you for having me.
Michael, let's begin our conversation today by placing the focus on chess, a game that requires a great deal of concentration, analysis, and patience. Now, what motivated you to introduce the game of chess to middle school youngsters who can be a bit impulsive and at times may have problems staying on task?
Absolutely, yes. So chess is something that I've been playing since I was about 5 years old. My grandfather, my dad taught me how to play. I would always watch them play chess and compete with each other. And then as I got older in my teenage years, in my 20s, I would sit with my grandfather. We would play chess. We'd talk about chess. He'll tell me, his favorite games, his favorite people. So as far as middle school, when I started teaching middle school, especially in Philadelphia, I wanted to introduce a game that would teach students patience, teach them the ability to think on their own. Chess is a game where there's nobody in your ear. There's nobody telling you, what to do. You have to be quiet. It's just one-on-one, you versus another opponent. And I think for middle school students, they can be a little bit antsy. They can be a little bit, wiry. And I think when they sit and rest on something, especially chess, I think they can think the way that they really think instead of listening to their peers, listening to other people. So I think chess was the ultimate game, especially for my school at the time with, teaching in a impoverished neighborhood in poverty. I think those students really adapted to the game of chess.
When you introduced the game of chess, it's difficult at first. Mm-hmm. Did you find that your students were frustrated, or were you able to get them past that by maybe giving them a little encouragement or reinforcement, support?
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to get, when you talk about chess, you're going to get the students. I would say 99% of them were just, this is boring, or we're not doing this, or this is too complicated. But I think those students started to understand the beauty of the game, that it's you versus you, really. As long as you make great moves and you know what you're doing, you can win. You have the chance to win. And I think a lot of them, really appreciated the fact that they're beating their opponent by themselves on their own. And once, the first day you go over what the pieces are, the rooks, the knights, the queen, the king, what the position of pawns, what they do. But I think after that, they started to realize, this game is in my hands. I don't have to pass the ball, or I don't have to catch the ball, or I'm not getting the ball, and things like that. They started to really, really love chess, and I've seen, those students that, other teachers or principals are telling me, they're aggressive, they fight. And I've seen them sit and play chess for 30 minutes straight. And I'm looking at them and I'm saying, this is amazing. If only people that wrote them off the years before that can see what this student is capable of.
Do you find that some of those kids that got turned on by chess are starting to recruit some of their friends, maybe like, hey, this is great, why don't you come and do this with me?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you think chess is a nerd game or an uncool game, but most of the kids are just everybody's a kid at the end of the day. Middle school, you're a student, you're a kid, so they're recruiting their friends, and you see their friends come, and the friends that's too cool for school or the quiet friends, and they're all wanting to play, and it's I've had a range of just the sports students, the students that are the book students, the students that are the straight A's. I want to get straight A's all day. I seen all types of students actually want to play, and that was just remarkable to do for 3 straight years at that school where I started the chess club at.
Now, with chess, there are some parallels with writing, because when you're a writer, you basically sit there with either the paper in front of you or your Chromebook in front of you or whatever, and you create. And it's a very personal experience to get those thoughts down on paper. Just like in chess, it's that personal experience to analyze the board and try to analyze your partner the way a writer analyzes the audience,
Mm-hmm.
and see what can I do to best my opponent, or what can I do to target in on certain things. Are there things that kids learn in chess that maybe translate across to things that they need to learn in writing?
Yeah, it's a really, really great question. I think it goes hand in hand when you think about it's a thinker's game, and then it's a thinker's, I don't want to say job because I write, because I love it, but it's a thinker's thing to do, hobby, I would say. And I think you have to sit in your writing. For me, I put Mozart, I put Beethoven on, and that's how I write. And I think chess, when I even play till this day, I try to play at least one game a day, 2 games a day. When I do it, I'm sitting there thinking it's a process. I have to have everything off. I have to be into the game. And I think it go hand in hand with writing because, for writing, you have to come up with a story. You have to come up with a topic. For chess, before you even start the game, you have to know what are you going to do. What piece are you going to move first? Are you going to move your knight first? Are you going to move your pawn first? Are you going to bring the pawn up 1 space? Are you going to bring the pawn up 2 spaces? I think that's certain things with writing, because if you get your characters first, or if you get your chapter titles, or if you get the title of your story, if you think about your book cover, like you have to think, piece by piece. Everything's a chess move.
With chess, and you said that it was a little interesting at first to introduce that to the kids, but you found that they came in and they were attracted after a while,
Mm-hmm.
and it started to build its own culture, its own reputation.
Absolutely.
Now, writing, I found as a writing teacher, can be the same way, but I'm wondering, are there techniques or things that you do in a chess game in preparation to play a chess game that maybe some of these writers can do, and possibly the reluctant writers can find that, gee, if I do this, maybe it'll help me as a writer too?
Yeah. Another great question. Yeah, so if you prepare, like, let's just say you prepare to play, let's say 2 games, right?
Mhm.
And you say, okay, I want to do 2 different moves on both of these games. I want to try to beat my opponent one way, and then the next game I want to try to beat them another way to better myself. You can connect that with writing and say, okay, I want to create 2 stories. If I have one story one way, if I want to talk about, let's say you have one story as Paris. You're talking about Paris, and you're creating a character traveling through Paris. And then you have another story where you're talking about somebody that's never moved out of their city or never moved out of their neighborhood. Now you have 2 separate strategies. You have to collect information on the city, you have to collect information on the neighborhood and how that character would think, versus somebody that's traveling to Paris and what all the possibilities they can do. So you're coming up with 2 different game plans, I would say, especially with writing, because you can't put somebody living in a city, living in just a state that just only knows that, and put it into Paris, because now their mind is open, instead of their mind being closed to just that radius. So I think chess is the same way. If you're doing 2 separate games with 2 different strategies, you have to move different.
Now, a lot of kids today will grow up and go on to be in the business world, in the academic world. Some will be performers, and it's critical. One of the hard skills, the power skills nowadays, seems to be that ability to speak in public.
Absolutely.
And that's been a challenge for a lot of years for a lot of people at all different ages. And public speaking for middle school students can be a challenge, partly because some of them are just a little reluctant to feel that peer pressure
Mhm.
because they don't want to be in front of a crowd or an audience and, put themselves out there. Yet they'll make videos that they'll post on social media.
Mhm.
And there's a privacy, I guess, to that. So let me ask you, do you, in your opinion, believe that having the kids doing these videos, whether they're on their own or we assign them, does that help or hinder the development of public speaking in a middle school student?
I think the video correlation, it can be impactful, but public speaking at the same time is um, such a great thing to do, because not only does it introduce you to, let's just say, the world, or to your classroom, or to a conference space. um, you're bringing out yourself. You're not hiding behind a cell phone. You're not hiding behind a camera. You're not hiding behind a screen. It's people in front of you looking at all your features, looking at your voice, diction, looking at your eye movements. It's not the people on the screen saying, "Oh, they did this 20,000 times." You're public speaking that one time. When the teacher says, "Okay, you're presenting your project," you're not presenting your project 7 days straight. You're presenting your project in those 5 to 15 minutes, or whether it's 1 to 6 minutes, something like that. TikTok and Instagram, you can literally do the video 20 times, and then you can get it perfect on the first try, on the 20th try. And then now it's like, okay, nobody would ever know that. They just think that I'm just recording these videos. But truthfully, you're hiding behind your actual self, which is, I'm doing this one time. Some people are special enough to do something once, and there you go, I'm uploading once. But if everybody was being honest, if we all are being honest, we usually take those videos maybe an average of 5 to 6 times, and then we put up the great one. The pictures we keep taking it. So I think public speaking it's an art. It's the beauty of public speaking is you have this one time to public speak. You have to make this impression. That's who you are. Let's do this great thing. Which is public speaking, and present yourself. Instead of presenting your alter egos.
It's kind of interesting too that when you do a video, while you're producing that video, it's you. Maybe there are a couple of your friends around, maybe
Mhm.
not, but it's kind of a comfortable situation.
Yep.
And as you said, you can edit and cut and do whatever you wish to do. But when you give a speech, there's an audience there, and it's live. I agree.
Yep.
There's also a feel in that audience,
Hmm.
and you have to be able to adapt. Once you make that video and post it out there, that's it. There's no change being made. But if you have a speech that's not working, you need to know what to do to connect with that audience. And the really great ones, as I'm sure you know, connect first with the audience before they start making their point.
Yep, exactly. It's like a lawyer practicing his speech, in the mirror, or it's like the talent show they're rehearsing for a week or 2, 3 weeks straight. It's like the play, you're rehearsing, but once you get in front of that audience, there's no more rehearsing. There's no more what should I say at the trial. So you have to. The videos are different. You can record videos and come back the next day and upload it. So it's different.
So should we as teachers encourage our students to do both, to have experience in the area of making a video? And we're not necessarily telling them to post or not post. That's totally their decision.
Hmm.
But to maybe assign certain type of engagements where it will be a video production, while other times it'll be a live production, so they get a balance between the two.
Absolutely. As you asked that, I actually was thinking about one of my students today. He said, I asked him, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said, I want to be a scientist. And as you said that, I said, I was talking to him about, oh, maybe you can create science YouTube videos, right? But what if that student went to a science conference and he had to present his let's say he created something and he had to present that to at the conference. He can no longer make those YouTube videos, like you said, edit them. He's going to have to know public speaking and know how to speak, especially if he wants to create things, especially if he wants to work for a company where he has to go to conferences. So that's a really good question. I think it's best of both worlds. I think the students need both because YouTube's popular, TikTok, Instagram's popular. But at the same time, what if they grow up in their 20s and 30s and they have to speak in front of people? They have to, go to a job interview instead of it being online. You never know. So I think preparing the students for that reality is definitely key as an educator.
The topic of artificial intelligence comes up all the time. And some people think that it's the worst thing ever to happen, while others think, nah, this is going to be okay because we made it through the calculator and, we made it through the laptop. So it's not a big deal. And AI is something that has been looked at as, okay, so they don't have to think anymore. They just put what they want and boom, AI will punch it out.
Mm-hmm.
While others say, no. AI will give you information, but it's not always accurate.
Mm-hmm.
It uses whatever the algorithm has put into it to produce. And it also uses whatever you have entered in there as its own. You basically are almost turning over ownership to AI. There's a group of writers right now suing one of the AI providers for their work because they say you're breaking copyright laws.
Oh, wow.
So copyright now is going to be something that gets challenged, I'm sure. But back to the classroom, what should teachers do when they use AI to help students with their writing barriers, like writer's block or struggling to develop a point comprehensively to be effective, and make writing a little bit more dynamic and maybe a little less burdensome?
Yeah, I think as educators, as teachers, we can definitely incorporate AI, whether it's into a lesson, whether it's into research, and I'm going to touch base on that in a minute, or just whether it's into learning about somebody. I think the thing that we're taking away from the students is learning about something. And I see that often. It's like we're teaching, or teachers are teaching certain things, but there's no background knowledge to what that is. It's like if you're teaching about a writer, right? And all the curriculum says is this poem says this, and here's the writer. It's like the students don't even know who this writer is, what they believe in, what's the background knowledge, how many poems have they written, who are they? They're just getting one poem or two poems and it has the person's name there. Or they're seeing Abraham Lincoln and just seeing one quote from one thing from Abraham Lincoln, and they're not knowing that he did all these other things. So I think AI can be used for background knowledge, research. We can say, okay, go research this, and you give me a 2-page or 1-page research paper on this. Do not copy it, but use your own words. And you can use AI for that. You can definitely use Google, but at the same time, put it in your own words. I think if a student, especially young as middle school, if they're researching a person or an author or a writer or a musician, they should be able to know who they are by researching them, whether they use AI or whether they're using the internet, which technically, is AI. Or a book. We're looking at books all the time, but at the end of the day, a book is written information. So I'm not against AI. I'm not totally for it, but technically it's still written information as long as it's true. And I think, I agree with the copyright things as well, but as long as the information is true, using it for research, I agree with it.
One of the things that's being brought up, especially in the area of special education, is the fact that if the special education students and the students just learning the language, maybe as a second or a third language, if they can use AI just to generate some points, then they can take what's there, as you're saying, and develop it. into something that's their own, something that's in their voice and their tone, maybe a little bit more complex, and adding a little bit of themselves to it.
Mhm.
If you if the piece is just lifted straight out, then it's not going to be all that effective. One of the committees I'm on with the AMLE group, the Association for Middle Level Educators,
Mhm.
we were on a podcast talking about AI. And one of the things I had done to prepare is I went to AI and said, I want to talk about this aspect of AI. So what should I know? And AI gave me all this information.
Mhm.
Give me the pluses and the minuses. Well, the minuses were that AI is not always accurate. AI is not always reliable.
Mhm.
AI is not from the writer's point of view, but from the point of view of a database. So it was actually being honest. I was shocked
Yeah.
that if you're using this, here are some of the limits of what you're using as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I feel for the college professor that's going through the AI because last year I taught a little bit of high school. I did 6th through 12th last year, and the high school students when we had to do reports and I asked them to do reports, some of them 3 students did the same exact report, and I would go up to them. I said, I know you said this on your phone or you typed this in because some of the students it would have okay question mark here's your answer in the paper, and I'm like, okay, you guys and girls can't be that oblivious to this. You're just writing this and sending it to me on an email. You didn't want to cut that out, the AI person out. So I feel for the older kids and the college kids because they just want to get this over with if they're using AI, and the professor has to sit and literally look at those papers and say, okay, are they using AI or are they doing this from their own research, which is a struggle.
Yeah. A little bit different direction now. You and I have talked a little bit about this already before we came on air. And middle school students, when they become a little older and they're in high school, they have to start making some decisions. And before they even get to that high school, they have to decide, all right, what high school am I going to go to? Am I going to go to the one that is sent to by our middle school? Or are we going to go to maybe a specialty one? Will it be private school, a parochial school, an academy, a vocational school? What am I going to choose? And then beyond that, there's college to think about. So, in your experience, because you've dealt with students at different age levels, what do you find are the most daunting challenges that a student and their parents face when they're trying to make those decisions about what high school do I go to, what college do I go to?
Yeah, great question. Really great question, especially for this day and age. I would condense it down to 2 things because I've coached basketball. I've had students in middle school trying to get into high schools. I had to edit their papers or help them with their papers to get in. I had to look over, talk with their families about okay, they're getting this basketball scholarship, but here's the tuition. I've had students in college. I mentor the student. He went to Princeton, so I had to edit his paper trying to get into college. So I've seen everything as far as trying to get into high school, and I've noticed that the families usually are talking about tuition and the travel. Where is this high school at? Okay, do they have to take 2 buses or 2 trains? Do I have to drive them every morning, knowing that I got to be to work at 7 or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and they have to be there early? Um, the tuition cost. How much does this school cost? In Philadelphia, we have, I would say, prestigious high schools. There's about 3, 4 prestigious high schools in Philadelphia that if you come out of middle school and you're trying to apply to those high schools, first of all, they're looking at your grades. Second of all, the cost. So the students have to look at that. Are my grades right? And how much does this cost? If this high school costs, $30,000 a year, am I going to be able to pay that? My parents going to be able to pay that and pay for college? Or is the pressure going to be on me to get straight A's because I want an academic scholarship so they don't have to pay for college? They can just pay for high school. I think that's such an important thing for the families to prepare for, and the students to know. I actually just got done. We were testing this week, and I told my fifth graders, like, and my sixth graders, this is important. These tests are very important that you're taking these state tests, because in eighth, seventh, and eighth grade, there's going to be schools looking at this if you're applying to high school. So I think tuition and I think inflation now is something that's hurting a lot of people as well, because whether it's gas prices or whether it's rent or mortgage, certain things like that that's playing a role. Trying to get your student, trying to get your son or daughter into a good high school is key. And I think costs, and I think travel, your grades, that has everything to do with it. And it's a lot of pressure on middle school students to do well. We had interim reports go out today, and one of the students said, I need to get an A. I need to get an A. And I said, why? She said, because I've been getting A's my whole life, and I want my A's to travel into my high school years. So I know how it is. It's important to most students.
You talked about economics, and that's crucial in this day and age, and especially in our economic climate. So
Yep.
a lot of students are going to junior colleges, and they go there for 2 years, and then they transfer over because it's less of a burden economically. And the colleges and universities are beginning to be a little bit more in tune with that and connecting, even to the
Yes.
point where there are certain college credits offered in certain high schools. And there's an active participation and level of cooperation between those high schools and those junior colleges and those colleges and universities. They're all seeming to become more aware of those needs. And economically, yeah, that's something that every family has to look at.
Yes.
Because it's a struggle. Um, Other than the economics, are there things that absolutely should be looked at? Things like scholarships, or as you said, the transportation, um, maybe even, have I been out of this area of the country that I'm used to? And if I go to another area, what's that going to be like?
Yep. Yes. Yeah, I know. I started off, like, for me. I went away to school. I went to North Carolina, played basketball at a Division II school. Then I transferred back to Maryland. I also interned at Harvard recently for 3 years. Every 3 to 6 months, I would go up there, learn under my mentor. So I'll be on Harvard's campus in Cambridge, in Massachusetts, and just learning from him. So I've seen those students. I've spoke and introduced myself to students and sat in classrooms. That the students, this is prestigious, the university is prestigious. But then, like you said, you come down to the 2-year universities, and I want to quote one of my favorite movies, Good Will Hunting. The person says, oh, I can get my free education at the public library, right? And he said that in the movie. So if you can get a free education or a 2-year education, the same classes, right? You're learning the same thing at a 2-year school or at the library, or you go to a junior college and you get your associates. If that transfers over to the real world, what is so special about these 4 years universities that I went to, right? That we went to? What is so special about them? Is it the prestige? Is it the cost? And then when you come out, you're going to get a better job. I think that needs to be more transferred to these students that's going to the 2-year schools, opposed to, okay, I'm taking a finance class at Princeton versus I'm taking a finance class at a community college, but it's the same information. If it's the same information, what makes me paying $30,000 less attractable to whether I would pay $30,000 more? So like you said, I think students are making the decisions for them versus, the other students that are maybe following the school versus the education. Because it will be very, very scary if, let's say, somebody worked at Wall Street that went to Yale, but the other person works at Wall Street and they went to NJIT, right? And it's like, oh, I went to Yale, but I went to NJIT. And it's like, well, we both went to good schools, but Yale was the more prestigious one, right? Yale was the more name. But we're both making the same salary, And it's scary to say that, but it's like, that's reality. And then a community college, I want to be a nurse. I go to nursing school. But then I went to Harvard. I want to be a nurse. I went to nursing school. And it's like, well, where we make the same money. I think that's a bigger issue for these kids because they're seeing the same thing, not necessarily the schools how we saw it. And it's different now, especially with these businesses and entrepreneurship.
Those pressures are important too, because kids look at that prestige and that becomes part of their identity.
Absolutely.
And it's a hard thing to have to face up to, but they don't realize that, as you said, the information is pretty similar no matter where you're going.
Hmm.
Now, you may have people who have a wider background, who are more active in the field in
Yep.
certain institutions than in others, but there are outstanding educators at all levels in
Hmm.
all types of schools. And you can find a mentor in a small private college somewhere that maybe has classes where there are 12 students.
Absolutely. Yep.
But that person who's mentoring you is concentrating on you, where
Hmm.
you go to the large university and it may not give you the same type of education. You'll have the prestige and you're going to have to be someone who's an independent learner because you go into a lecture hall with 400 students.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And then the
Absolutely.
graduate student, the graduate assistant helps you out with your questions,
Hmm.
and you may not get to see the professor very often. So there are different strokes for different folks,
Yeah.
basically, when it comes down to. And you've got to know where your limits are, as well as the fact that nobody's going to come up to you 10 years after you graduate
Hmm.
and say, "Oh, you went to so and so, so you must then be worth more than somebody else," who they're going to look at your work record and say, "Okay, you've got good recommendations.
Hmm.
You're a good worker. Um, you get along with others. You can be a good self-starter. You're on time. You don't embarrass the institution." That's the person they want to hire in
Yep.
whatever field it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then even just taking back from what you were just talking about. Last year, I had some students look over the Fields Medal winners, and they didn't even know what the Fields Medal was. And I said, this is like mathematicians and things like that. And one of my students was researching, and he said, yeah, this is a Fields Medal winner. He teaches now at, and he read off the university, and nobody even knew I didn't even know what the university was. And he won that person won a Fields Medal. So, like you said, some things are just the way it is.
Yeah. Now, you as a writer have done a range of things,
Yes.
and you cover a lot more than just one topic. So, my first question to you about you as a writer would be, is there a thread that seems to run through your series of books? Is there something that kind of pushes through?
Yeah, I think a thread or a theme would just be creating stories, creating different type of stories that I can write, that I can, gravitate towards, and that other students in the past or other people in the past have spoke to me about, that I drifted off with and said, you know what, I want to create something like that, or I want to create a different type of story. So I think my first couple books touched on that, touched on those themes. Where I'm just creating things, and whether it's somebody traveling, whether it's somebody dreaming, whether it's somebody getting help from their family members, like different type of novels that I create are just based off of stories and things that could be true, things that are true. I just like to go in a wide range of that.
Now, when you write, um, do you make a decision? Gee, I think this is the audience I want to address, so I need to write a book in this area. Or do you wait for that inspiration and say, you know what? I don't know what my audience is going to be, but man, I really feel this and I see it. So I got to write this. I got to write this.
Yeah, I think I'm built off inspiration. Whether it's my own, whether it's things I see, whether it's I'm inspired to just help others, which is every day. My therapist likes to say, oh, you write when life hits you and you're going through a lot, and he said that's when you write your best. And there's sometimes I have to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I love dealing with life things or going through things in life that other people can utilize my help with, and then I can sit and write about it. Even the first chess moves was talking about a student that's trying to go to college, but he had peer pressure from the kids that weren't getting into the smart school, and then he had peer pressure from the kids that were going to the regular school, this community school. So I think stuff like that can help others. I think that's my inspiration.
You seem to write a lot about gaming, and that's with chess, with personal issues. And your latest book is entitled, however, God AM and God PM, which seems to be a bit of a right turn, but maybe not. Maybe you'll explain that in a moment. Your book is described as a 60-day devotional for healing and for growth. So you say that you write from inspiration, and I think that's the best writing. As a writer myself, and somebody who teaches writing, I always say you got to feel it before you can write it.
Absolutely.
But what was your inspiration for writing God AM and God PM?
Yeah, so my faith is very, very important to me. I know I spoke with my grandmother highly recently, and just by sitting with her when I was younger, you know, being a person of faith, having a relationship with God, going through my books, and just being in a phase when I came out with that book, and still to this day, of healing and growing and learning through things. I think I just wanted to help people, help what how far can you go in your faith? How far can you go in your walk in 60 days or 30 days or 90 days? Or if you have to come back and revisit the book after 120 days, sit with it. And it started when I was traveling. I would travel and I would look up in the sky and just thank God for a new day. And I would always take a picture of the clouds and say, God AM, like good morning, but it's like, God morning, really, God AM. That's the meaning of it, God morning. And then at nighttime, when I would say my prayers or I would thank God as well, I would put or post like, God PM, and I was basically, God night. And I would just say that to myself for years. And I said, what if I just helped people realize that, not only is God going to be there for you in the morning, but he's going to be there for you at nighttime as well. We all say prayers in the morning, or some people say prayers at night. But just know that he's going to be there the whole day. So if I can inspire somebody to realize that, just because you woke up doesn't mean that you can just say one thing and go about your day and forget about it. Let's realize that this whole day is a blessing, and realize that we have each day to be thankful for every time we wake up, which is God AM, and then every time we go to sleep, which is God PM.
Now, when I was speaking with my students today, I was explaining the book report form that I gave them. And I said that when you do your report, one of the things I want you to tell me is the target audience. And we discussed how target audience, one of the kids said it perfectly. He said, that's the audience that the author wrote the book for.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, perfect. It's exactly what it is. Now, you were inspired to write this. Was there a certain audience that you were trying to target? Was it those of faith, those without faith?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you shooting for?
Yeah, my target audience was for anybody with hope, especially those without faith, and then those with faith as well, because just because you have faith doesn't mean that you're faithful all the time. Just because you don't have faith doesn't mean you don't hope. People with no faith, they hope for something, whether that's hoping that they get a new car or a new house, or whether that's hoping that their kids make it home, or you're still hoping, you're still dreaming of something. And those with faith, just keep going down your faith journey, because we all face challenges, we all face different type of things, conundrums every single day, every single week, every single month. So mine was basically like a refresher, devotional, 60 days. Let's recharge, let's refresh, study these verses, because these are verses that not only my grandma helped me with, but these are verses that are some of my favorites that I know for a fact can help others, and it has helped others as well.
God AM and God PM sounds like it was a book that was inspired in you from a very early age.
Absolutely.
That's not something that just came one day as you were sitting there in the lunchroom, not by any means.
Yeah.
Now, every writer is looking for his or her next book.
Mhm.
And I guess my question here would be, are you feeling that inspiration for another one? Is there an itch there that needs to be scratched?
Yeah, so my latest one, Tom Wandermine, came out in March. The Adventures of Tom Wandermine. It's a travel book. It's about a kid, Tom Wandermine, who is dreaming and he travels around the 7 continents. So it's more like middle age, elementary school, could be high school, but more so at middle school. And he's more so traveling and he's learning about each 7 continent. But in between when that came out and it's doing well and little press runs here and there, in between March and like I would say last week, I was like, you know what, I'm itching to write my new one. I already wrote my ninth. I wrote it 2 years ago. I'm just waiting for God's time to put that out. That's one of probably my longest book ever. But that hasn't came out yet. But I'm definitely itching. I have like 3 titles down that I want to write. But I'm just going through the flow with Tom Wandermine and definitely promoting that more and getting that out the way. But I would say, knowing myself, January is probably the last month I'm going to give myself before I try to start writing something. So after holiday season, I'm pretty sure I'm going to pick up my fingers and go to the laptop and write a new book.
Now, the things that you've said have covered a broad area. We've talked about writing and teaching writing. We've talked about chess, and we've talked about those feelings of inspiration and morality. If somebody wants to get in touch with you about any of these topics or something that maybe we haven't yet approached, how may they do so?
Yes. So if you Google Michael Walker Thomas, everything will pop up. I'm very, very humble. I don't like to say I'm Googleable, but I am. So if you Google Michael Walker Thomas, it'll come up. And I'm Book of Michael. You can mainly follow me on Instagram at Book of Michael. So those are really my 2 platforms. LinkedIn, obviously, if you Google my LinkedIn, will come up. But those are mainly my 2 things, either by Google or by Instagram.
Michael Walker Thomas, it has been an absolute pleasure having this conversation. Thank you for spending some time with us on We Have Issues. Your work is quite interesting. I know that your students appreciate your efforts as well as your creativity. They're very lucky to have you as their teacher, and not only their teacher, but something inside me says that you don't only serve as a teacher, you serve as that person in the classroom who gets the best out of his students, who inspires his students, and who's always ready, no matter what time of day it happens to be, no matter where you are in the building, and sometimes I'm sure even outside of the building, that you're the mentor to many of those students as well. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you. It's an honor to be on here, so I really appreciate it, and thank you for having me once again.
Well, that concludes this episode of We Have Issues, where we examine important issues dealing with middle-level education. I'm your host, Joe Pizzo. Have a wonderful day.